From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log. Well, we've had a weekend pass since last we spoke, and I hope you had a nice weekend and had a little fun. It was, a couple things happened in the media. There was, of course, the SNL Cold Open, which everybody predicted about 60 seconds into Katie Britt's Republican response to the State of the Union. Everybody was saying, "Oh my God, this has got to be SNL's Cold Open," and of course it was. Scarlett Johansson, the actress Scarlett Johansson, in the role of Katie Britt, and she was spot on. A very good impression, a very funny impression, and good for you. It wasn't quite what I was hoping for. I was hoping for something a little bigger and over the top, a little more absurd, because Katie Britt's performance itself was already comically weird. And the only way to top it is just to get absurdly weird. And SNL has a cast member who could have pulled it off. I think Sarah Sherman. I'm a big fan of Sarah Sherman. She's one of the cast members. And I think she's very funny. And I think she would have been capable of playing that part and taking it to a whole nother level. Just make it nuts. But, that's okay. They did what they did. I've said before, you and I talked about how, let me see if I remember his name, James Austin Johnson. If I got that right, he's the guy who plays the Orange Menace on SNL. And I complained recently that if they're going to continue to use that character, they need to make him more, they need to make the comedy much, much darker. Right now, the character is just kind of funny. He's almost lovable. And we really can't have that. The Orange Menace deserves to be skewered in a much more dark manner. And he has to be portrayed as the monster he is. So I'm hoping they'll do that. And again, I kind of hoped that Sarah Sherman would do that with Katie Britt. But there you go. It's not the biggest story. But it's one of the more fun stories of the week. Oh, speaking of Katie Britt, since last we spoke, has been exposed now for the lies she told, especially regarding that horrible, horrible rape story. Turns out that the woman she was talking about, this incident happened like 20 years ago, not under Joe Biden's presidency, but the presidency of George Bush W. The woman herself, I don't have her name in front of me here, but she came out and spoke out against this exploitation that Katie Britt and the Republicans, the kind of thing they do. Yeah, exploiting victims for their own political gain. So, yeah, she came out against it. And, like 4 or 5 Pinocchios from the Washington Post. That's how they gauge their truthometer. Oh, also, Katie Britt's husband, I guess, is an ex-NFL player. I looked into her a little bit, and I didn't realize. And apparently they're multimillionaires, so this little kitchen she was sitting in, I imagine she doesn't do a whole lot of bread making in that kitchen. I don't know. And I thought, oh, ex-NFL is maybe CTE is contagious. I don't know. That's my bad, tasteless little joke there. Also, over the weekend, the Oscars. I have to say right off, I'm such a hypocrite. I always tell you about the evils of television and be careful and watch out for corporate media and entertainment and how I hate awards shows or the fact that they give awards in the arts, that the very idea that artists, filmmakers, musicians should be pitted against each other for awards, I find horrible. And yet, I watch the awards shows because they're just kind of fun. And I like the celebration aspect of it, especially this year because there were some movies I actually liked. I usually don't like most of what Hollywood has to offer. I'm almost always disappointed, even if somebody, if my friends recommend, oh, you got to see this movie or that movie, and if I give in, I'm almost always disappointed. It's like, come on, Hollywood, what are you doing? But this year there were a few that I liked. I loved Killers of the Flower Moon. I thought it was fantastic. I thought, all the rest of the directors, why don't you just go take a vacation. Let Martin Scorsese just make all the movies. He's just so damn good. I really liked American Fiction. I didn't turn cartwheels, but I thought it was very, very good. And I loved Poor Things and Emma Stone's performance. Just fantastic. The film itself, the cinematography, everything about it, the costumes, just wonderful, just so great. Mark Ruffalo gave a great performance. My favorite, Willem Dafoe, a Wisconsin guy, born and raised in Appleton, and went to school right down the street here at UW in Milwaukee. So, yeah, I enjoyed the Oscars. And I don't know if you watched, but Jimmy Kimmel hosted. He had kind of a funny joke right at the end of the show, right before the big final Best Picture award. They're usually running long. In this case, they were running a little short. They actually had an extra minute. So he came out. He said, "Yeah, we got an extra minute. I want to share with you. I got a review of my performance tonight." And he starts reading from his phone. He says, "Oh, Jimmy Kimmel is the worst host ever," and it's really insulting. And it turns out it's from the Orange Menace himself, who live tweeted this thing. So everybody got a nice kick out of that. And then Kimmel had the best line. He looked right in the camera and said, "Oh, Mr. Former President, so glad you're watching. I'm surprised you're still up watching. Isn't it past your jail time?" And everybody howls, and it was kind of wonderful. I wish I could come up with a perfect formula for this. I want us, each of us, individually and together as a community, to be able to be happy and celebrate things and celebrate art and go to basketball games and have fun. And, I want us to be able to do that without turning our back on the kind of evils of the world. In other words, it feels like we have to do one or the other. We have to just forget. We have to completely forget all of the real world stuff and take our minds off that so we don't feel the guilt and just kind of escape for a while. I don't like the escape aspect of it. I wish there was a way we could be happy and celebrate and at the same time acknowledge the evils of the world and celebrate each other in how we're fighting against those evils. You know what I mean? I don't know exactly how to do it psychically or socially. I don't have a formula. I wish if I ever come up with one, I promise I'll let you know. Yeah, because the world is screwed up 1,000 different ways. But we also have to maintain our sanity. I wish we didn't have to make one invisible for the other to be real. I don't think that's... Well, okay. Well, here's one way to do it. A couple of the awards were for... Well, let's see. Best Animated Short was for a film called War is Over. So that's good. And if you recognize that title, it's a subtitle of John Lennon's song, Happy Christmas, War is Over. And I haven't seen this. I'll have to go find it and watch it. Best Animated Short Film follows, I'm reading here from something, follows the life of two soldiers stationed at the front line in an alternate reality of World War I. They play a game of chess while a carrier pigeon delivers messages across the battlefield about them being on opposing sides of the war. Okay, so it's a kind of a message film. Reading again, no matter who wins the game of chess, there aren't any winners at war. Okay, so it's a movie about war and advocating for peace. He got some flack from a lot of folks because he accepted the award but didn't have anything to say about Gaza. And you'd think that maybe you would. You have this opportunity. I liked it when the Academy Awards were more political and people were yelling and booing and about the issues of the day. I kind of like that. I think that's fine. And that's, as I was saying, I wish there was a way to combine our activism and our acknowledging of things that need to be discussed while we're happy and celebrating. Let's toss them all in the same ring and see what happens. The other political, if you will, movie that won was 20 Days in Mariupol. It won for Best Documentary, I think. And there the director, producer, Mstislav Chernov. How do you pronounce a name that starts with MST? Mstislav Chernov. His speech was very nice and poignant, and he called for everyone to support Ukraine and spoke out against the war. Said something like in his quote, I wish I never had to make this movie. So that was a nice moment, nice poignant moment. Well, speaking of war, Gaza continues, the nightmare continues. The holy month of Ramadan has begun, and that was the deadline that Netanyahu kind of unofficially gave a while ago. Said you better have those hostages released, Hamas, before March 10th, or we're gonna go on with our continue with this attack on Rafah. We're going to attack Rafah, the southern part of Gaza. Well, March 10th has come and gone. Ramadan has begun. No attack yet, but it appears imminent. It's going to happen. Famine has already begun, and if and when Rafah is attacked, the very most dire predictions for that, for the subsequent, not only the violence itself from the bombs and guns, etc., but massive starvation and disease, and it's just an unthinkable nightmare that seems to be getting worse every day. No let up. And in this one weird incident, really kind of crystallized this whole thing. Did you hear this terrible story? Well, the U.S. apparently has been dropping aid from the air. These big pallets dropping down on parachutes. And there are these scenes on the beach, and some of the parachutes didn't drop all the way over to the sand side of the beach. People running out, swimming out into the water because some of them missed their mark. Just horrible. And I don't know about these things, but experts I've heard are saying this is just the worst way to do it. It's just the last resort of how to get aid in. Well, this one story is just so horrible. One of the chutes didn't open. And a pallet came down, and damn it kills 5 people and injures several others because a parachute failed to drop. I mean, so here they are, these desperate people out on the beach. They're looking up, and bang, 5 of them get killed by a pallet falling out of the sky. I mean, it's like the worst, darkest South Park episode. Just horrible, horrible. Ugh. 31,000 plus. Total dead and counting. We're in, let's see, October, November, December, January, February, March. 5 full months into our 6th month. Jesus. 12,000 plus children dead. According to UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, Gaza war has killed more children than in 4 years of worldwide conflict. So, yeah, people are trying, but Israel continues to block aid coming in. Speaking of UNRWA, they reported that a member of their staff was killed and 22 others injured when Israeli forces hit a food distribution center in Rafah. There's a United Nations investigative agency. We're waiting for the report. They've investigated now the allegations from Israel that UNRWA participated in the original October 7th Hamas attack. And their stories changed. They kept changing. Like first it was like half a dozen members of UNRWA were Hamas, and then it was they doubled it, and then they tripled, and then it was like a whole big percentage, like 25% of their workers. And I forget how many are in UNRWA, but it's like thousands and thousands and thousands of people in this organization doing really, really important relief work. But, Israel pretty much tarred and feathered the entire organization with these allegations. And if we want to look at Israel's record, they've been shown to be liars. Netanyahu and the IDF are just lying about all sorts of things. Right from the very first Hamas attack, October 7th, the story that Israel told is just a pack of lies. I mean, yes, it was horrible. Yes, people died. Yes, it was an attack. But these over-the-top kind of, pregnant women with their babies torn out of their bellies and beheadings and these horrible rapes, and none of it happened. There's been independent reporting trying to verify, trying to document all of these accusations, and they just aren't true. They're just a pack of lies to justify Netanyahu's response. And they're attacking refugee camps. They're attacking food distribution. They're blocking aid from coming in. They're denying allegations of genocide and ethnic cleansing, which I don't know how they do it anymore with a straight face. They just claim that the numbers are jacked up and too high. The International Court of Justice, of course, they came out with that preliminary ruling. Remember, the South Africans were the ones who brought the case to the International Court of Justice, charging Israel with genocide. And the ICJ, with their preliminary report, they didn't go the full 10 yards and say, yes, this is genocide, but they stopped just short of that, and they gave Israel some very severe warnings. Like, this does look like genocide, and you better damn well show us right now that you're doing something about it. Just basic international law, that you're watching out for civilian casualties, that you're not attacking food, that you're not blocking aid, and they're doing all of it. So I'm not sure what the ICJ can do. They don't have their own troops. They don't have any enforcement, any way of enforcing this. But yeah, I mean, at this point, it's just world opinion. And if we could get the United States and Joe Biden to move an inch on this, and, rhetorically, I guess he's trying to, but let's talk about Joe Biden for a second and the American response to all of this. It's just, I hate to say this, I don't even want to admit that it's true, but it just looks like domestic politics. That, he's getting all these uncommitted votes in the various primaries because people don't like his Gaza policy. So, okay, all right, the airdrops and drop pallets on people, and now this kind of ridiculous floating pier idea that you could send aid in on the Mediterranean coast. I remember thinking in the very beginning, I don't know how many hundreds of miles is the Gaza coastline. Couldn't, 50, 60 countries just all send a big old ship, each of them, and just hit the beach like Normandy with food and medical supplies, and could even have like mobile hospitals? And I remember thinking of the very opening days and weeks of this conflict, why isn't the world community doing that? But, what do I know? I don't know. I mean, is the IDF they're going to fire on a hospital ship from Norway? I mean, I don't think so. I don't know. What do I know? So yeah, now Joe's kind of making some noise like, you got to protect civilians, but he's not backing it up with anything. Still sending him money and supplies, and yeah, he's just got to cut him off, not another nickel. Gives him diplomatic cover in the UN, keeps, vetoing multiple votes, condemning Israel. Yeah, it's just bad to worse every damn day. Well, here, let's talk a little domestic politics. Over the weekend, the Orange Menace hosted Viktor Orban, his good buddy from Hungary, and just heaped praise on the guy. Just the smartest, best leader. Quote, he says that's the way it's going to be, and that's the end of it, right? He's the boss. Talking about Viktor Orban. That's the way the Orange Menace wants to run things. He wants to be the boss. Do you remember, I forget, a year or two ago, Matt Gaetz, the freak from Congress, was overheard by a reporter talking to one of his colleagues saying that's what the boss wants. He referred to the Orange Menace as the boss. That's the way they think of him. That's the way he thinks of himself. Talk about a twisted misunderstanding, a really dangerous misunderstanding of how government is supposed to work. The president is not the boss of members of Congress. That's not the way it works. That's not the flow chart. But yeah, he's the boss, he said admiringly about Viktor Orban. And that's, if you look at the playbook of Hungary, that's exactly what the Orange Menace wants to do. Wants to consolidate power in the Oval Office, wants to make Congress a rubber stamp, pretty much, wants to just load up the whole government with loyalists and partisans. We'll have to spend some good time dissecting Project 2025. I know you've heard of this. It's from the Heritage Foundation. And they don't try to hide anything. They just say it right out loud. They put it right there in black and white. They basically want a one-party state filled with loyalists and partisans to do the work. And freedom of the press is no longer a thing in Hungary. And again, it's the wet dream of the Orange Menace. That's what he wants. Talks about shutting down whole media outlets, calls them criminals, calls them the enemy of the people, wants to shut them down, wants to change libel laws. Constitution means nothing. Again, he says these things right out loud. Yeah, even if you have to suspend the Constitution, even if you have to break a few laws, even if you have to kill some people, sometimes you do. You know, we've heard him say, he says these things right out loud. And there's a new book coming out. I just saw some headlines. I forget now who the author is. You know, we've had lots of books now from his various people in his administration. It's another one of those. And there are a couple of scenes that we've heard before in reporting, but now they're getting a lot of attention again. Quote, Hitler did some good things, according to the Orange Menace, talking to the author of this book. Yeah, Hitler did some good things. It's like, well, what? What good did he do? Well, he had a booming economy. Oh, okay, well. And then the other report we heard earlier, but it's getting highlighted, during the Black Lives Matter protests in Washington, he said, well, why can't we just shoot the protesters? We can shoot them in the legs. Let's just shoot them in the legs. He wanted the United States military to shoot United States citizens in the legs. He's said other things about shooting, about, I forget the exact quote, but yeah, if you're going to steal, you're going to be we'll just shoot you. Every single day, we really should put together a list. It would be as long as my arm plus, but it's every damn day. John Dickerson had a comment. John Dickerson is a political reporter. I forget his exact title. He's one of the guys over at CBS. And he was in part of one of these panel discussions and talking about various things. And he said, yeah, I got to remember, too, there's a physical component. I remember the quote. There is a physical component, meaning that there's violence to be feared from MAGA world. In one of the more stark examples, well, of course, January 6th, but a really stark example was the impeachment. The second impeachment, apparently, according to reports, there were several senators, Republican senators, who wanted to convict, but they were afraid for their safety and the safety of their families. So this is the world we're living in. And we got to keep our feet on the gas, right? A recent survey showed that 2/3 of voters have no idea of the things I just talked about. And the daily deluge of horrible things that comes out of this guy's mouth. Not just jokes, not gaffes or blunders. No. Declarative, definite statements about how he wants to run things. And they don't know. They just literally don't know. We talked about it in our last episode together. Most people have normal lives, and they've shut him out. And, you know, I understand. But they have to know. And so anybody on your podcast, you do have a podcast, right? Everybody has a podcast now, right? or whatever your form of communication is, you got to let everybody know every day. We have to keep people informed on what he'll actually do. Back to this whole autocrat club. The Orange Menace definitely wants to join his buddies. Orban, Netanyahu's in the club. Putin is in the club. Russia, their election ends on Sunday. I wonder who will win. Portugal just had an election in which their sort of right-wing populist party made some pretty big gains. So yeah, we got a worldwide fight on our hands. We've talked before about how voters just haven't been given an adequate alternative from the left. They've got kind of centrist, liberal, the Bidens of the world who make a lot of promises and yet life is still hard and prices are still high, and you wonder, well, give me an alternative to this. And then the right-wing populist nuts make a lot of promises, but they are giving them an alternative. It's a bad one, but it is an alternative. If they had a left alternative, I think we could give them a damn good fight. The fight can't be between the liberal, quasi-conservative centrists, the Joe Bidens of the world, and the right-wing nutjob wannabe dictators. If that's the spectrum, we're all screwed. Now, picture that spectrum and add an actual viable left, making real, serious arguments, acknowledging the hardship, especially the economic hardship of people. And when half the country lives paycheck to paycheck, which is the case in this country, when half the country lives paycheck to paycheck and can't afford both, you got to choose between food, education, health, any kind of leisurely life or vacation. You can't have all these things. You can have one or two of them. Choose which ones you want. Those people need an alternative. I understand why they're rejecting the Bidens of the world. I completely understand it. They're desperately seeking an alternative, and a lot of them are moving towards autocracy. That's what happens when they don't have a choice on the left. We have to give them a choice on the left. Or they're just going to choose the Orange Menace. They're going to vote away their own freedom. Or they could go another crazy route and go RFK, who is talking to quarterback Aaron Rodgers about being his vice presidential running mate. That is not an Onion headline. That's real. That's an actual thing that's reported. Apparently, the New York Jets are asking for, in trade, Joe Rogan and a third-round draft choice. All right. So there's the log for this time. I'm Charles Purcell. Thanks for listening. Please go to the website, charlespurcell.com, for this and all other podcasts in the series. Thanks to our flagship terrestrial station, River West Radio, riverwestradio.com. You can write me at charlespurcell@gmail.com, follow on Facebook, and as always, thanks to Peter Donalds, who wrote and performed the theme music. All right, there it is. Talk to you next time.